Well, hello everyone. Earlier this evening, I saw Predator Badlands, the latest installment in the franchise, which it stars Elle Fanning, A1, and Demetrius Schuster Kola Matongi. Apologies for pronunciation there. And what really sold me, or one of the things that sold me, was a, a return of the writer and director of the previous live action installment on Prey, Dan Trachtenberg. And I will say this right off, don't let the PG-13 rating fool you. It is very much in tone with the earlier installments in terms of pacing and plotting, and where. And I would say that it's more like a hard PG-13. Think something like, say, the Nolan and Snyder DC films I've talked about and to follow the mark, so let's begin. The film centers around a Yalta named Deck who is played by Demetrius going through a rite of passage on the a planet Genna, which has and lethal flora and fauna all abound, including a rare species of alien that's even his own father and king of their clan fears. And when his ship crash lands on the planet, he was from a reluctant alliance with an android played Elle Fanning, who happens to be built by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, hence why I chose this shirt. And I will say that even though we're not getting a new AVP right away, I could see that definitely happening in the next decade or so, or less, based on how well this one does. They're tracking currently for the biggest opening in the entire franchise. Not counting the AVP films, I don't really like to talk about those much, and the it also wants one of the alien that Deck is hunting for, so they can study it and make medicine for it. But this being the way in the Utani Corporation, it's definitely not going to be for altruistic reasons. Given how they're willing to send him so many androids on the planets, and the rationale basically being, even if they break, we'll just make another or batch of them. The idea that they would be favoring the company over for their workforce is definitely not a stretch in this day and age at all. And it is a very tightly plotted film, much like the original ones from the 80s. They had, it runs at a lean hour and 47 minutes, so definitely one you can definitely take in pretty easily. And even has a similar kind of pacing where it's a very much a slow burn. There is action within reason, but a really good establishing atmosphere and world building that's especially on the Yalta homeworld. I mean, especially that we there aren't as many overt Easter eggs that connect them to the Alien franchise as others. I mean, but they have dropped hints in the past that have functioned as a visual universe, and given how John Davis has and his studio have been involved with both franchises in the past, it makes sense. And I also really enjoyed, again, how even though they do use some CGI for more elaborate sequences, is that the Yauta costumes are still as great as ever, being people in suits. I mean, the makeup and effects work done by Legacy effects are as great as ever. Especially, and even when they do use CGI, they do it in a way that doesn't clash aesthetically with the suits. There's a especially is good when and a lot of the flora and fauna are lethal, ungenna, and especially when you're dealing with an android that is missing her legs for most of the movie as well. I also looked up information behind the scenes that apparently that yes, actors really did basically he have her being worn as a backpack through a lot of this, and hopes that this this person was also playing Deck was also on the American Ninja Warrior before he started making movies, so he has experience with that kind of endurance test, say the least. And I can definitely say that Dan definitely has understanding the franchise, given how it just came off looking at the animated spinoff, which I also recommend. So it's definitely a year where I pick out some ripe lemons to make into the lemonade, deliciously. In fact, it's not just one revisionist Predator film I've got to talk about this year, or even this weekend. I have bet it lined up for at least two. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely not against the idea of an unrated director's cut appearing on Hulu or on Blu-ray. Hey, apparently some of the people working on the movie were surprised, as I was, when it got the PG-13, because a lot of the violence does seem like it was shot with an R in mind. I mean, apart from maybe the aliens, and especially the outer not bleeding the conventional red. It's have orange blood that looks kind of like Fanta. Uh, the outer course bleed green as they often do. Who and the androids. I don't know if they still use the same kind of mixture that Ian Holmes said smelled really bad in the studio lights, and Lance Henriksen also realized something similar. Her, but they do still have this the blood that looks kind of like a mixture of milk and yogurt of sorts, man. And I definitely enjoyed seeing just as once again the company favoring short-term profit of all else. Oh, it's mean where they it's not definitely not stretch at all that there's so little focus on the long term they don't think about tomorrow, today. Hey, it's definitely like that. There is indeed a lot of black comedy in there as well. Oh, and I would say that out of all the ones I've seen in this franchise, this is definitely ranks one of the higher installments. I would say it's in the same ballpark as the original from 1987, as well as 2022's Prey. And they even contemplated bringing back Ember Midthunder's character from that film before decided to go in a different direction, which is good. I mean, the arguments about how existing IP are definitely worth having. And I've always maintained that it's not just having all this in your wheelhouse, it is what you do with it. I definitely think that suits just fine for both myself and the mouse, just shrugging and saying, guess we're doing Fox movies now. So, even though this may not be I might have to think about how I would place this among the films I've seen this year, but it's definitely. I can say at the very least it's going to be an honorable mention of my favorite ones of the year. Here, especially since there's only 6 weeks left or so, and I intend to make the most of them, as I'll explain, both here on the community tab. So, my final rating, if I decide right now, is a definitely trophy-worthy 3.5 out of 4, 4.5 out of 5, and now on to the incoming attractions. Gotta do them in release order to keep things as gentle as I can. Running Man remake next week on November 14th. I am just still not feeling that one. I'm not saying the people trying to pump this one up. I'm not trying to accuse them of being wrong. I'm just saying, I'm personally not sold. My review of the original cult classic is going to be a a up on the day that the remake is out. As a response, I've done that before because I'm getting flashbacks to the failed Total Recall remake a decade ago in the worst possible way. Especially since the more bullish predictions for the opening have now been brought back down to earth, especially in light of what I'm talking about next. November 21st, Wicked for Good, with its tracking for another record that I think should give people who are running these theaters reasons to rejoicify. And I have been listening to the soundtrack from the play pretty extensively, as well as the first film. Have I wonder when they're going to be dropping the OST for the second half. Especially I'm already liking what I'm hearing of their arrangements of No Good Deed and For Good, and I definitely have a lot of confidence in this one because it definitely can see that it makes sense to release it here because I think it was part of the reason why the original Wizard of Oz from the 30s went from being until it overlooked when it first came out to now being seen as a timeless classic. That it got shown a lot on Thanksgiving, and depending on where you look, it still is. And I definitely enjoy it because I think I enjoy this one because it's definitely, like I mentioned before, it's taking the best elements from the earlier adaptations and the play and the books. Not just the title book, but also a lot of Baum's extended works, since I will acknowledge that it had to change some things from page to stage, as well as from stage to screen, because I wouldn't say it's as as Randy as what Randy was doing, but it's definitely things in that book that would probably cost from PG rating. I'll say that much for free. December 19th, Avatar Fire and Ash. So 3 years after The Way of Water joined its predecessor in the $2 million club, this is definitely another one that's standing to expand the epic saga. And even though I can already tell there's going to be a lot of additions to the lore and the world they've built, the underlying goals that both the hero and the antagonist want to achieve are simple enough to understand by anyone. Where the Sullys want to keep their family safe, if the antagonists want the Sullys' heads for what they've done, and the idea of having a Navi faction that's antagonistic does intrigue me, in both design and personality. He, especially with Quartic still being in play, and I can definitely say that it should probably do well, as should the next SpongeBob movie for very different reasons. The question remains exactly how well, because the next one I'm going to be talking about to close this out actually surprised me despite my initial skepticism. Okay, also in December, Anaconda, where it's a reboot of Anaconda about making a reboot of Anaconda, and hilarity ensues, where it's definitely leaning pretty hard on the black comedy aspects of the other movies where I'll admit the original one from the 90s as well as the sequel in 2000s, Hunt for Blood Orchid, were not great by any means. They were at least entertaining for reasons that the filmmakers certainly he did not anticipate, where they garnered both an ironic and unironic fan base. And though they also put out some DTV sequels that definitely did not have the same budget or technology levels of the actual installments, in Spain, this one is definitely looks like it'll be pretty wild. I mean, I don't plan to see it right away, but something tells me I'm not gonna turn down the idea of Jack Black running around with a dead pig on his head from a giant snake, personally. And I definitely can say that among other things I'm working on, I am making good progress on my remaining, videos on Pokemon Ultimate Journeys, and also definitely has some surprises as when for the remainder of November as well as this December. You will just have to wait and see what they are, though. That is all for now. See you all again soon. Take care, everyone.